Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon. My name is Alessandro Amicarelli. I'm a London-based human rights lawyer, and I represent the European Federation of Freedom of Belief today, as I did last year. As a secular and independent association, we advocate for the human rights of all minority religions across Europe. And today we are making a statement about freedom of movement in connection with FOB, freedom of religion or belief in Europe. Freedom of religion and belief and freedom of movement are very tightly tied, and such a tight connection should be carefully considered of by governments when dealing with issues concerning these two freedoms. Freedom of belief does include, in fact, the right to manifest one's religion or belief, and this includes the right to disseminate materials, to teach about the specific religion or belief, to carry out proselytism activities, as the European Court of Human Rights has repeatedly stated since back in 1993 in Kokkinakis versus Greece case. Freedom of proselytism is tightly tied to freedom of movement of missionaries to carry out their own teaching activities freely and legally without any restriction or interference from the governments. Furthermore, preventing someone to enter a country on the basis of their faith will constitute a breach of the European Convention on Human Rights, as they will be forced to remain in their country or to settle somewhere else. People belonging to minority groups, roughly called sects or cults, are usually target of such restriction of freedom of religion and belief and of freedom of movement too, being denied, for instance, the access to some areas on the assumption they are dangerous cults. Additionally, preventing minority groups from building their own temples or mosques or churches will be preventing the right of people living in different areas of the country to move in that area. This has happened in Italy with the Lombardy legislation, so-called anti-mosque law, but it is in fact a legislation that has affected all minority groups in that region. And as a human rights association, we are very happy that the Italian government has challenged this legislation, and we are now waiting for the response from the court. There are many times NGOs that are receiving funds and subsidies from the government that are very strong in lobbying governments, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, and these governments adopt legislations against people belonging to minority groups that are prevented from moving to that country. We do exist as a federation in order to make the content of the freedom of religion and belief guidelines alive and be implemented and adopted across Europe beyond any borders. People belonging to religious and spiritual groups have a clear right to freedom of movement in connection to their freedom of religion and belief, as all people do, no exception being acceptable. Thank you very much.